Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with it for a moment. When was the last time someone's level of commitment made you uncomfortable? When was the last time you watched another human being operate at a level so focused, so locked in, so unreasonably consistent, that it didn't inspire you at first? It actually scared you. Because that's where we're going today. We throw the word discipline around like it's a morning routine, like it's waking up at 5 a.m., drinking a cold glass of water, and checking a box on a habit tracker. No. No. What I'm talking about is something entirely different. What I'm talking about is the kind of discipline that rewires a person from the inside out, the kind that makes ordinary people look at you and say, something is wrong with him. And you smile because you know exactly what's right. See, most people will live their entire lives flirting with greatness, touching it on Monday, abandoning it by Wednesday, and making peace with average by Friday. And the world has made it so comfortable to do exactly that. There are 1,000 distractions designed by a billion-dollar industry whose only job is to steal your focus and sell you back your own wasted time. But then, every once in a while, you encounter someone who doesn't negotiate with distraction, someone who has drawn a line in the sand of their own soul and decided that, on this side of the line, there is no compromise, no excuse, no delay. And that person walks into a room, and you feel it before they even open their mouth. There's a weight to them, a stillness, a quiet kind of power that doesn't ask for your attention. It commands it. That is the scariest level of discipline you will ever witness. And I'm here today to tell you, that level is not reserved for the chosen few. It is not a gift handed down at birth. It is a decision, a brutal, beautiful, daily decision that anyone in this room, anyone, can make the moment they stop lying to themselves about what they're truly capable of. So buckle in, because today, we are not talking about tips. We are not talking about hacks. We are talking about transformation. And transformation, real transformation, has always been the scariest thing a human being can choose to walk toward. Let's begin. Most people have been taught to think about discipline the wrong way. From the time we were children, discipline came wrapped in consequence. You misbehaved, you got disciplined. You broke a rule, discipline followed. So somewhere deep in the architecture of how we think, discipline became associated with correction, with restriction, with something that happens to you rather than something you consciously choose for yourself. And that misunderstanding alone has cost millions of people the life they were capable of living. Because here is the truth that the scariest, most committed human beings on this planet have already figured out. Discipline is not a response to failure. It is not a tool you pick up when things go wrong. It is not a temporary measure or a motivational season. At its highest and most powerful form, discipline is a standard of existence. It is the invisible architecture upon which an extraordinary life is built, brick by brick, day by day, in silence and without applause. Think about what that really means. A standard of existence is not something you turn on for a big moment and turn off when the pressure disappears. It doesn't take weekends. It doesn't negotiate with your mood. It doesn't soften when life gets heavy or pause when circumstances get complicated. It simply is. It becomes the baseline, the floor, the non-negotiable minimum of how you engage with every single day that is given to you. And that is precisely what makes it so rare, because the moment discipline becomes a lifestyle rather than a reaction, the moment it shifts from something you practice occasionally to something you are fundamentally, you enter a category of human being that the majority of the world will never understand. They will watch you and call it obsession. They will study your consistency and call it extreme. They will look at your sacrifices and call them unnecessary. But what they are actually responding to is the mirror you hold up simply by existing, because your standard exposes the gap between what they said they wanted and what they were actually willing to do. The most disciplined people you will ever encounter are not the loudest in the room. They are not the ones posting every workout, broadcasting every sacrifice, or seeking validation for every good decision they make. They operate in a different economy entirely. Their currency is not approval. Their currency is integrity, the private, unwitnessed alignment between what they said they would do and what they actually do when nobody is watching, when nobody is counting, and when quitting would be the easiest and most socially acceptable option available to them. That is what separates the remarkable from the routine. Not talent, not resources, not timing, but the willingness to hold yourself to a standard that most people will never even dare to imagine for themselves. There is a version of discipline that the world celebrates. It is loud, it is visible, and it is easy to admire from a distance. It looks like the athlete who grinds through a brutal workout while the cameras are rolling. It looks like the entrepreneur who posts about their 4 a.m. hustle and collects thousands of likes before sunrise. It looks like effort performed for an audience, consistency displayed for approval, sacrifice packaged and presented for the world to witness and validate. And while there is nothing inherently wrong with that, I need you to understand something critical. That is not the scariest level of discipline. Not even close. The scariest discipline is the kind you will never see coming. It does not announce itself. It does not seek your recognition or require your applause to keep moving. It operates in the margins of life that most people never think about. The 11 p.m. moment when everyone else has gone to sleep and the work still needs to be done. The Tuesday morning when there is no competition, no deadline, no external pressure of any kind, and yet the disciplined person shows up anyway with the same intensity they would bring to the most important day of their life. That is where the real separation happens. Not on the big stages, but in the invisible, unglamorous, completely unwitnessed moments that compound over time into something the world eventually has no choice but to notice. Silence is the signature of the truly disciplined. While the noisemakers are busy performing consistency, the genuinely committed are busy being consistent in rooms where there is no audience, in hours where there is no recognition, and in seasons where there is no guarantee that the effort will ever produce the result. They have made peace with invisibility because they understand a principle that the undisciplined never grasp. The work does not care whether you are watching it. The process does not require a witness to be effective, and the results, when they finally arrive, are simply the delayed reflection of every private decision that was made when showing up was inconvenient and stopping was completely justified. What makes this level of discipline genuinely frightening to observe is that it cannot be faked over time. Short bursts of visible effort can be manufactured. Motivation can be performed for a season, but silent, grinding, relentless consistency stretching across months and years, that is something that only comes from a person who has fundamentally restructured their relationship with purpose. They are no longer doing the work to feel good about themselves in the eyes of others. They are doing it because it has become as natural and non-negotiable as breathing itself. There is a question that separates the disciplined from the undisciplined, and it has nothing to do with strength, willpower, or talent. It is not about how much pain you can tolerate or how hard you are willing to push your body and mind to their limits. The question is far simpler and far more revealing than any of that. The question is this: what do you fear more? Because every human being on this planet is running from something. Every single one of us has a fear that quietly governs our decisions, shapes our habits, and ultimately determines the ceiling of what we allow ourselves to become. The difference between the ordinary and the extraordinarily disciplined is not the absence of fear. It is the nature of the fear that drives them. Most people fear pain. They fear discomfort, inconvenience, embarrassment, and failure. They fear the burning in their lungs at the end of a hard run, so they slow down before they reach their limit. They fear the vulnerability of starting something new and possibly falling short, so they never begin. They fear rejection, criticism, and the judgment of people whose opinions should carry no weight in their lives whatsoever. And because they are governed by the fear of pain, they unconsciously organize their entire existence around avoiding it. They choose comfort. They choose the familiar. They choose the predictable, the safe, and the manageable. And they spend a lifetime wondering why the results they want never seem to arrive. But then there is the other kind of person, the one who has looked honestly at their own potential and made a terrifying realization that the greatest pain they could ever experience would not come from failure, rejection, or hardship. It would come from arriving at the end of their life knowing they were capable of more and chose less. That person is not running from difficulty. They are running from mediocrity. And mediocrity to them is not a disappointment. It is an absolute horror. It is the thing that wakes them up before the alarm. It is the thing that pushes them through the last repetition when every muscle is screaming to stop. It is the thing that keeps them studying, building, refining and growing long after every reasonable excuse to quit has presented itself with open arms. This is what makes the truly disciplined so difficult to compete with, and so striking to observe. Their pain tolerance is not simply higher. Their entire relationship with pain has been redefined. Discomfort to them is not a signal to retreat. It is confirmation that they are moving in exactly the right direction, closing the gap between who they currently are and who they have unconditionally decided to become. There is a moment in the journey of every truly disciplined person that most people never hear about, because it happens quietly, internally, and without ceremony. It is the moment when discipline stops being something they do and becomes something they are. It is the shift from practice to identity, from effort to nature, from conscious choice to unconscious standard. And when that shift happens, everything changes. Not just what they produce, but who they are at the cellular level of their character. They do not wake up in the morning and decide to be disciplined the way most people decide to go to the gym or drink more water. They wake up and simply exist as a disciplined human being, the same way they exist as a person with a name, a history, and a heartbeat. Understanding this distinction is everything, because as long as discipline remains a practice, something you pick up and put down, something you apply with intention and abandon under pressure, it will always be fragile. It will always be vulnerable to the bad day, the emotional season, the unexpected setback that gives you every reasonable justification to pause. And the moment you pause, the moment you negotiate with your own standard, you have revealed that the discipline was never truly yours. It was borrowed motivation wearing the costume of commitment, and borrowed motivation always finds its way back to its original owner. But identity is a different force entirely. When a person reaches the level where discipline is woven into how they define themselves, external circumstances lose the power they once had over that person's behavior. They do not need the perfect environment to perform. They do not need the right mood, the right season, or the right level of inspiration to show up fully. Because showing up fully is simply what they are, and a person cannot betray their own identity without experiencing a rupture so deep it feels like a betrayal of self. That rupture becomes more painful than any sacrifice the discipline demands, which means the discipline sustains itself not through willpower alone, but through the sheer force of self-concept. This is the level that genuinely unsettles people when they witness it up close, because you cannot appeal to this person's emotions to get them off course. You cannot offer them comfort as an alternative, because comfort is not part of how they see themselves. You cannot use a bad day as leverage, because a bad day does not renegotiate their identity. They have done the inner work so completely, so thoroughly and so honestly that the external world simply does not carry enough weight to move them from the foundation they have built inside themselves. Discipline at this level is no longer a habit. It is a home. We live in a world that is obsessed with talent. From the earliest years of our lives, we are conditioned to look for the gifted ones, the naturally blessed, the people who seem to arrive in this world already carrying something the rest of us were not handed at birth. We fill stadiums to watch them. We build industries around them. We tell their stories in documentaries and best-selling books and late-night interviews. And somewhere in the retelling, we convince ourselves that what separated them from everyone else was the gift itself, the natural ability, the raw, unteachable, God-given talent that made them special before they ever broke a sweat. And that story, as beautiful and as compelling as it is one of the most dangerous lies that has ever been told at scale. Because history, when you study it with honest eyes, does not bow to talent. It bows to the ones who showed up, not occasionally, not when the conditions were perfect and the energy was high and the crowd was loud and the reward was visible, but every single day, in rain and in drought, in seasons of momentum and seasons of silence, in the years when the world was watching, and in the long, unglamorous years when absolutely nobody was paying attention. Those are the people history remembers. Those are the people whose names we still speak generations after they are gone, not because they were the most gifted in the room, but because they were the most relentless. Talent without discipline is a promise that never gets kept. It is potential sitting in a room with no doors, full of everything it could become, and nothing it has actually built. And the world is filled, absolutely overflowing, with talented people who never became what they were capable of becoming, because they trusted the gift more than they trusted the grind. They believed that what came naturally to them would carry them further than the daily, unglamorous, deeply unsexy work of showing up without excuse and executing without a pause. And they were wrong. They were wrong every single time. The person who shows up every day without exception, without waiting for motivation to arrive like a scheduled appointment, that person does not just outperform the talented, they eventually become the standard by which talent is measured. They redefine what is considered possible in their field, their family, their community, and their own life simply by refusing to let a single day pass without honoring the commitment they made to themselves. The world does not ultimately celebrate what you were born with. It remembers, respects, and is forever changed by what you were willing to do with what you had, every day, without fail, without excuse, and without ever asking the world for permission to be great.